Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Alex Gizis, Speedify CEO. I'm here with Will, one of our software developers. And this is Speedify Office Hours. What's Office Hours? It is your chance to ask us, the makers of Speedify, whatever questions you have. And we'll answer them. How do you ask? You post comments wherever you're watching this video, which is probably Twitch or YouTube. And we will see them, we'll post them, we will answer them. Besh asks, is there a way to create a protocol that reduces latency or ping to 0 milliseconds? Only if you include sticking the two computers that are actually touching as a protocol. Otherwise, no. One of the biggest drivers behind latency is speed of light.
Yep.
And the speed of light is very slow. It only goes 2 billion meters per second. Painful. Obviously, you don't notice it if you're just going down the block or whatever. But yeah, no, if you're going to the other side of the country, the other side of the world, bouncing off the moon, there's absolutely no way to go fast than the speed of light. Strangely, we've been getting a lot of comments on our videos asking, well, why don't you just use quantum entanglement for that? A longer story than I can tell, but quantum entanglement cannot be used for communications. It does not transmit any information. Is Starlink going to reach 1 gigabit per second? They say they are. They say they are. Yeah, I've talked to people who are beta testing their latest stuff, and it is faster and more reliable than what it is today, but still not a gigabit. But I think they're going to get there. I know they're going to get there. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be this year. But what do I? I'm totally an outsider here.
Yeah, they've got this.
But yeah, the rate that they're improving stuff. I mean, have you read the stories, right? I mean, they're launching new satellites, what, monthly? And they're doing a new version of the satellite each time.
Yeah, I've also heard that they keep falling out of the sky.
Well, yes, that's part of...
That might be part of why they keep launching it so quickly. Because they're falling.
They do. So.
Yeah.
All right. John says, if enough low Earth orbit satellites are launched by Starlink, Amazon, the EU, India, and Chinese for connectivity, and they burn up in the atmosphere every 5 years or so, the excess aluminum cause atmospheric issues.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably. There isn't... again, I'm not a climate expert, but
doesn't sound good.
How much aluminum do you think is floating around in the ozone layer? I bet it was 0 before, and I bet it's not 0 anymore. And I don't know. My first guess would be it's a global cooling thing.
Yeah.
That reflects sunlight long before it gets low in the atmosphere. But I'm just talking out my butt here, John. Yeah, so I went to Mobile World Congress last week, and it was fantastic. Barcelona, Spain. Yeah. They said 109,000 people attended. I hadn't been since pre-COVID, where it was 105,000. So it is back. It is 8 halls full of every cell phone company, every cellular carrier, the router makers, the software makers, the whole kind of mobile, industry. One of the things I found really interesting is CubeSats. So CubeSats are satellites that are about the size of my coffee mug. And talking to 2 different companies that do them, they're saying for $100,000, you can get a satellite packed with your electronics this big in orbit for 3 years, and then it burns up on its way down. Like, we could afford that. Like, I don't know what we would do with it. Like, what electronics do we need in space?
I don't know. And does that include like shielding or something from?
I mean, it didn't include the cost of the satellite, right? I mean, you make satellite, I think.
So it's not just like
$100,000, but yeah, I mean,
some compute up there and they provide all the packaging.
I mean, I think these companies would help you with it. And I think if you want something normal, a Raspberry Pi with some solar panels, I think they can make that happen. So one company, FOSSA, FOSSA or E, sorry, was a startup that was they were putting LoRa radios.
Those are so cool.
So the long-range, low-speed Internet of Things radios on these, running at 925 megahertz. So it's just the ISM band that everyone's allowed to use. And they're putting satellites in space. And so they have this plan for like $5 a month. Your device gets to send 2 packets a day. Now, 2 packets a day to us, we're like, what the hell? But if it's a weather station, it can report the weather up to space. You drop it on top of a mountain, you drop it in Antarctica. Twice a day, it can report back the weather. That might be amazing.
The size of the packets might be very small.
It might be. I don't know. Besh says, I have 25 megabit speed on my phone and 70 megabit speed on my router. Speedify truly combine the speed.
Gets pretty close.
Gets pretty close.
It depends on your hardware a little bit, whether you're doing encryption and how much jitter and weirdness you have in your connections, but it gets pretty close.
Well, yeah, particularly if they have very different weirdness, right? If they both have terrible latency, that's okay. If they both have great latency, that's okay. But if one has much better latency than the other, or one has much worse jitter than the other, Speedify can end out kind of correctly deciding that, maybe I should just use the 70 megabit connection, right? So you should try it. It comes very close. As close as one can reasonably do. So, anyone else have problems with Chrome? So Chrome finally did it. They broke all the old extensions. They've been talking about it for years. So I know for me, the web is suddenly full of ads. Oh my God, it stinks. It stinks. So I haven't gone searching for
Paradise.
It's
It's ads. I mean, at least for, like text-based pages, you can usually get a reader that'll sort of cut out all the
Yeah.
ads, but
All right. The built-in bypass capability just could be used for certain predefined apps and websites. Is it possible to add a few user-defined apps to be bypassed while VPN is enabled?
sort of.
Yes. So on Android, of course, every app shows, whatever apps you have installed, they show up and you can bypass or not bypass. On Windows, Mac, Linux, there's the command line interface. And if you go, and routers, yeah. There are bypass options. If you look at the document, there's a Speedify CLI.pdf. You can add bypass certain sites, IPs, domain names that way. It's a little trickier than we would like because a lot of times, when you visit a website, it's actually then hitting 10 different servers. It's hitting CDNs, which are shared with other websites, and it's hitting the back-end server, and perhaps it's hitting PayPal and all this stuff. So sometimes just putting in, the domain name that you think you're hitting isn't enough. But you can play with it, especially if you use like the Chrome developer tools, bypass the site and see if something is still not working. You can see in the network view what sites it's hitting. You can add those too. All right. Oh, Ryan says, for now, it looks like you can still go into the Chrome settings and re-enable disabled V2 extensions. Aha. All right. So, Barcelona, every other booth had a sign about like enabling your AI network of the future. Literally 50% of the companies there had a slogan about AI as their subtitle. It was downright embarrassing. I'm not sure if we're going to make it, but I walked around the show for like 10 minutes, just walking along. Whenever I saw a sign that said AI, I'd stop, focus on it, and then move on until I hit the next one. Of course, I never made it 20 steps without seeing another one. So there might be, I feel like if we sped it up, there could be a pretty funny video of zooming around the Barcelona show, seeing all the AI stuff. And I only saw one truly cool AI demo. Hamina Wireless, little company from Finland. They do software for planning your Wi-Fi network. And the guy was able to just take a picture on his phone of the hotel floor plan from the fire emergency escape, right? They have it on the doors, this way to your exit. He's able to just take a picture of that, pop it into the app. The app figured out where the walls were, that it was a floor plan, figured out the scale, drew it, said, here's where you're going to want the Wi-Fi routers. Here's where you want to run the Ethernet. And he said, no, I want the Ethernet to go down the main hallway. And he dragged it, and then it rearranged all the Ethernet lines. And so that was AI actually working. And it's kind of crazy. Besh asks, where can AI be used in VPNs, protocols, and networking industry?
Can't really.
I disagree. So Will and I were arguing about this. I think AI is getting good. I think it's become useful. So the only thing we're using it for in Speedify right now, by the way, is the translations.
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT is changing it, our English to German, Japanese, Korean, all those languages. And that's why we added so many more languages. Because what do we care? We're just asking ChatGPT to do it. And that's working pretty well. You cannot, right? We have to make decisions so fast about, this packet, which connection should go on. You can't kind of go to ChatGPT and have it say, well, looks like it's a TCP packet, but I noticed the port number, sorry, we need the packet there and back by now. I wonder if you could get it to generate rules in some cases that could then be run at high speed, and you tell it how well its rules worked out, right? You can't have it involved in every decision. So.
Yeah, but for that, maybe it could be useful for routing, which are just like intractable problems, network routing on like a very big scale. But for decisions where you would want something to blame and to understand when it goes wrong, I think it's particularly incompetent at least right now.
Another one is something about the bypass stuff.
Yeah.
Because, and of course, we didn't use AI. We just built a statistical thing once upon a time. We built a version of Speedify that we didn't really distribute, where it recorded what apps you used and what sites they visited. And then we did that for a while and just fed into a statistical model. Just good old-fashioned, if there are IP addresses we've only been seeing used from a single app, then when we see that IP, we say it's probably that app. And with just a little bit of training, we had 94% accuracy, right? We were able to say, oh, this person's running this app, without looking. Kevin would open some app and be like, oh, Kevin's done that. So. Jonathan asks, are you guys hiring? We might have a position open. I don't know. I would say we are not at this moment. But there's a job section on the website where we'd have anything posted. But yeah, I think at this moment we are not hiring. Why is TCP slower space than here on Earth? I guess reference to some of our videos. So the thing about TCP is there's a bunch of back and forth on how well things are going. Like when the conversation starts, it sends a message and says, I want to talk to you. And the other guy writes back. It says, okay, I'll talk to you. And he says, okay, I'm talking to you. And then he starts sending the data. On Earth, you don't notice that. If you have 10 milliseconds latency, that whole conversation takes 1/30th of a second. If you are bouncing it off the moon, 2.5 seconds, that's like 7.5 seconds. The first 7.5 seconds after you click the link, nothing's happening. It's not even sending your data. So it's latency.
Didn't even spell this AI didn't even spell COBOL right.
Yeah. All right. You seem so, and you must program COBOL. All right. All right. So here's my COBOL story. Graduating college, 1995, and I'm interviewing for jobs. And this consulting company, AMC, American Management Consulting or something, pays for me to visit them in New York. And I do 4 interviews, and they're like, you're great. Our chief technical officer is so excited. She wants to meet you personally. Go up to the 70th floor. So go up to the 70th floor, and she's in this giant office, high ceiling, wall from glass from floor to ceiling, looking down on skyscrapers. And she says, I really only have one question for you. It's like, okay, what's that? She said, if we offered you more money than anyone else, but we tell you your first project is programming COBOL, what would you say? And I said, well, I'd understand being the low man on the totem pole. But I assume I would, then get to move on to better projects. And she looked at me and she said, that's fantastic. Everyone else just says they turned down the job. So I leave and I get a job offer from them for more money than anyone else offered me. And of course I had to turn it down. I had no choice. Because they would never hire anyone to take over for me. Everyone else said no. If I took it, they'd put me on COBOL, then they'd tell me, sorry, we've been trying to hire to replace you, and nobody'll do it. And then I'd be the COBOL guy. So, that's my COBOL. All right, John Paul, what are your thoughts on the ESP drama? Man, I filmed a video about this yesterday.
Disable networking. Don't let them do anything but compute.
So, I mean, the ESP chip, if you put it in, so it's a neat chip, first of all, and it's everywhere. They've sold 1 billion of these chips. It's Wi-Fi, it's Bluetooth, it's a little tiny CPU, right? I mean, if you have a smart light bulb, if you have a smart dehumidifier, a smart light switch, anything that you can connect to with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi and it just does one or two little things, you probably own an ESP32 chip. So many of these little things, because they're $2 in low volume, right? Huge numbers, hobbyists, make your own robot kits have an ESP32 in them. Yep. And so the claim is if you tell it to just act like a Bluetooth chip for another computer, these people, TarLogic, who test Bluetooth, their entire company is testing Bluetooth chips, products and services. They said they found secret commands in it, and this is a huge security vulnerability. Well, the secret commands are not on the Bluetooth side. It's not that you can wirelessly connect to it and take it over. It's on the computer side, right? And they're basically the commands to run a debugger. You can read any of the memory, you can set any of the memory, you can update the software, you can actually change the MAC address, the serial number on the chip, right? So it's not documented, but the CPU can tell it to do all these things, which I guess is more or less what you'd expect. But obviously, an evil person has control of that. They can do bad things. And they can just install another, fake firmware on your Wi-Fi chips that it does accept connections over the air that let you take it over. But for that to happen, that means they've already got you, right? They're on your CPU at a low enough level to inject, non-standard commands into your Bluetooth driver. I mean, they're probably root, right?
There's no concept of root on the ESP32. But
no. This would be like on a Linux processor sending commands over the data bus to it, right? If it's standalone, this vulnerability doesn't exist. It's when it's acting, when taking HCI commands, which is the Bluetooth hardware. Honestly, doesn't seem like such a big deal to me. Over the course of yesterday, they actually changed, if people are watching, they changed some of the wording in the report. At first, they're like, found massive vulnerability, all Bluetooth chips, and the words in the report changed to become possible to exploit. So they tuned down their language over the course of yesterday. Expressive, the company that makes the ESP32, basically said there is no security vulnerability. These are just the commands to support a debugger, but fine, they'll do a software update and take them out. Okay, so that's the official news. Speedify only for those with several bad connections. I can see that the router subs for like 3 terabytes of data plan would be unlimited for those who want to combine several high bandwidth. If you need more than that, we can talk.
Yep.
There are people sending more than that. So Speedify is most dramatically awesome if you have several bad internet connections. Right. That's the truth, right? I mean, there are people who are combining good internet connections and fast internet connections and things, and using it so, you know, if their fiber optic fails, it'll switch to cellular. But all of those are less dramatically awesome than if you have, you know, if you have 3 internet connections and one has terrible latency and one has 5% packet loss and one's only 1 megabit. You put those together and oh my God, for the first time you have a good internet connection.
Yep. It's still awesome to just throw it on while you're streaming and know that if something happens to one of your connections, you're going to be fine.
But only if you give it another connection. So here is Speedify running right now on this computer. Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and they're both going to the same router. That's not how it's supposed to work. They're supposed to be going to different routers. So you just saw me do it. I plugged in this iPhone, which is on AT&T, and now we've got a cellular connection. If that Comcast cable modem goes out, we'll be on cellular. So that's good. I should have noticed that earlier. And the Wi-Fi, I'm not going to mess with that now. Probably should be connecting to one of the Starlinks or something that we have here in this office. Bonker John, what's the fastest you have ever downloaded something? I don't know. Do you know?
I mean, I assume at rate line, you know, like, so not faster than a gigabit.
We were messing all around with one of the phone carriers, and we rented 2 40 gigabit per second servers. They have 40 gigabit per second Ethernets. And we just checked how fast can we download giant files from one to the other. And it was about 40 gigabits. But I mean, that was totally cheating, right? I mean, I had these.
They're in the same data center.
Yeah. These like $2,000 a month servers. I rented 2 of them and just, yeah.
So the speed of light can go about 1 foot in a nanosecond.
Correct.
So if these things are close enough, the speed of light is negligible. You can just sort of plop that.
Well, that's the interest. When you get up into gigahertz speeds, when you have a CPU that's going, 2 gigabits, 2 gigahertz, like if the chip was somehow bigger than a foot, you'd start having problems where
interesting.
It can't get across the chip in a clock tick. It seems like, this was about to become a huge problem when computers stopped getting so much faster, right? And we're hitting real problems, right?
Good time to get a computer.
Yeah. All right. Do you think cloud PCs like Shadow PC and cloud gaming is going to make a comeback in the future? Well,
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, no, there were all these things launched a couple of years ago where like gaming system was in a data center somewhere. So from any computer or whatever, you could play the game, but the game is now affected by your internet connection's latency and bandwidth. So you could have this massive graphics card, but then it had to compress everything and send it down to you. I don't know, man. Naman asks, how is security taken care of in VPN connections? Since you might have a server, if someone gets the server's IP address and port number, is there a possibility someone could hack?
No.
Well,
they can try.
They can try, right? There's layers and layers of security. So we invented a whole proprietary VPN protocol with all this clever stuff we do about putting packets on different internet connections that no one else in the world does. We did not invent our security. Our connections are encrypted with DTLS, the latest version, 1.2. Using AES 256-bit ciphers, and we didn't even implement the code. We just took boring SSL, which is the encryption code in the Chrome browser. It's open source. Google says you can do what you want with it. We take that code and we put it in our code, and that is our encryption library. So Google, of course, has people review that code, pays people if they find a bug in that code, and once Google gets the bug fix in, we take it and we add it to Speedify.
And that's just for the privacy of the data. So nobody's going to be able to see it unless they have total control over the server for longer than, and maybe even views into the memory, which just isn't possible. And there's multiple layers of virtualization and firewalls.
Yes.
That you're not.
And on the server we run
authentication. I mean, you're not going to be able to get in there.
Yeah, we take hacking tools and install them on our servers and say, try to hack the server now. And, and vulnerability detection. Do you see is any of our software set up wrong so that someone could hack it? Are we using any versions of software that have been hacked? And so we have all these tools we're using that we're updating all the time and then running on our servers. Obviously, there's no guarantee if some nation state comes after us. Just true of anyone. But we've got diagrams of our process where how a thing goes from an idea all the way to out on production. And at every single step, we have tools looking for our mistakes, looking for our vulnerabilities, and then monitoring tools to see if anything weird happens on a server and quickly gets people's attention. So if someone broke in, it would quickly draw our attention. But
we've we got Massa as well.
That's correct. Big news here. Thank you, Will. The big news: we are now a Massa certified VPN. So Google and a bunch of security companies got together and wrote a standard on how to test VPN clients to decide if they are actually secure.
Which is awesome because there's a lot of sketchy, weird, not quite what you want for privacy VPNs out there.
Yeah. So Google brought in a security auditing company called Decra, and they audited our security, and they were good, and they approved us. So you can see this in the Google Play Store. And it's funny, for all the work and testing, and they're running hundreds of tests on our software. It's just like Google adds one line of text. This is a secure VPN app tested by a third party. So I think we're gonna put it in more spots on our website because more people want to know. But yeah, we've been tested by Decra to Google standards for a secure VPN, and we passed. So that's fantastic. Like an over-the-air update side channel. Oh yeah, on the ESP chip. So I mean, it's not over the air, because I think when you say over the air, when you're talking about wireless chip, you literally mean the air, right? It's not coming in on the antenna. It's the wired lines going from the one chip to the other. They can send, update side channel stuff. So ESP can do Wi-Fi. You can get cheap 5G chips. Man, we need Speedify to bond them in the cheap powerhouse device.
Yeah, Speedify's not going to run on ESP. You wouldn't want it to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, you're not going to run Linux on that thing. That's not. Raspberry Pi, you can do it.
I've hit 1.4 to 1.5 gigabits in speed test and Speedify.
Yes, you have. You let us know about it too.
Oh yeah. You've got you're very excited when you got your 2 gigabit internet connection. Yeah, we talked about that. So I have a gigabit internet connection in my house, and I got the top end Eero routers, 2 of them. Mm-hmm. And my goal, so John was talking about how he's trying to actually see 2 gigabits in his house. My goal is 200 megabits to everywhere in my house. My basement, my attic, my kitchen, my backyard, my driveway, right? So that was my goal, and I nailed it, right? I mean, you know, honestly, we don't have apps that use a gigabit, right? I mean, that my download now takes 3 seconds instead of 9 seconds. I don't want to be negative, but to me, if I have 200 megabits in my basement, in my attic, in the tree in the backyard, I'm good. So that's what I shot for, and that's what I got.
Crank up the volume, please.
Crank up the volume, please. Oh. Is that better? Move the mic a little closer.
Hopefully that's better.
Can Speedify and the Magewell Director Mini do multi-cell phone tether feature in the Miri Router?
Doesn't have one USB port, right?
Yeah, I think it only has
but
one
you
USB
got
port.
parent share. So really
is parent share fully exposed in the Director Mini?
I thought it was, but now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Zaphod, would having 2 cell phones from different providers be a decent backup for losing cable internet during a fire in our community?
First of all, cool name. Okay.
Yeah.
I get it. Second, yes.
Mr. President. But yes, absolutely. Having 2 cell phones on different providers would make such a difference. The ability to have things go wrong, and you're all still on the internet.
And what you're looking for is for them to probably use different towers. Because then if one of the towers gets weird, too many people on it, or it's too far away, or they just stop working, whatever, the other one is a source of redundancy.
I'm not sure that parent share is. I actually just don't know. And I will talk to Magewell about that, because they could certainly configure it so it just accepts, and maybe they have. It should be configured so that it just accepts any invites from anybody who wants to share with it. Right? So it doesn't really need to show up in its user interface. Just let anyone with Speedify say, oh, there's a Director Mini, share my internet with it, share my internet with it, and then have it use it. I will check with them. They might have done that already, and if not, I'll tell them. And it would be a quick change for them to get their next software update. All right, good suggestion, Supra. All right. So we got a new video Between Two Palms talking about how SpaceX streams their launches using space lasers. Kind of cool stuff. Yes, so SpaceX now, they're actually using the satellites to talk to provide internet to spaceships.
Pretty cool.
And now it's like, so once it's like both mind blowing, and then like, of course
fiber optics without the fiber.
Yeah, but like that, there's an internet service provider for spaceships. We are living in the future.
We need some spaceships first.
$100,000, we can have one. It'll be this big. But yeah. So you see SpaceX's latest Starship exploded.
There's so many of them.
Yeah.
But it's good, it's not bad when they explode. I mean, we want that to happen and to learn from it. NASA, I think, is just terrified of ever having an explosion because it means that their funding would dry up. Right?
Yeah. So I read a book by some people at MIT, and they were talking about how they convinced NASA they were making a mistake, that they were spending so much worrying about safety that they were spending more than the missions would cost. And that if they just had unmanned ones, sent rockets up, you design them, you launch them, and even if a few blow up, by skipping all the, you just double check the safety, don't quadruple check it. You could afford to send so many rockets that you'd end out with more successful missions. And NASA agreed, and they started it when the first rocket blew up. They were all dragged in front of a congressional committee and canceled the program. Yeah. The Congress people couldn't believe that they only double-checked the safety and what's wrong with them. And they explained the math, and they were right. And the Congress people told them that they had wasted taxpayer dollars when they had, in fact, saved the taxpayer dollars. And that was just the end of that. And NASA went back to the way it always was. NASA is the way it is because Congress is the way it is. And Congress is no good at engineering, which is sort of obvious, but they can't be in charge of an engineering organization, right? I have seen mean opinion ratings. What does it tell us about our connection? Since I have seen similar scores on both cellular and Wi-Fi, Speedify was still using the Wi-Fi only. All right, so the mean opinion score, this, I should have given it a better name, but it's an old voice over IP standard. So the reason it's called mean opinion score is that they brought in hundreds of people and had them do voice over IP calls over different internet connections. And sometimes they'd give them loss, and sometimes they'd give them jitter, and sometimes they'd give them a slow connection, sometimes give them a fast connection. And they'd ask them, how good does this call sound to you? And so they got everyone's opinions, and they took the mean of it. And they ended up coming up with an equation that described the relationship between internet connections, latency, jitter, and loss, and what people are going to say is how good the call was when it went over that internet connection. It is a very strange scale. It is a scale, I believe, from 3 to 4.5. Right? Oddly, many actually, I think it's 4.7 is the highest. Yeah, and many websites say it's a scale from 1 to 5, and it's just not true. There's if you had 0 latency, 0 loss, 0 jitter, you end up at like 4.7. You can't make it to 5. So Speedify goes ahead and calculates that on the connections, and because the numbers are so ridiculous, although we show them, actually, I guess it's time for me to do a screen share. We just converted it. We found there's some scales that take those numbers and convert them from excellent to very good to good to, and we use that to go out of 3 stars. So 3 stars means good connection. If you go here to the mean opinion score, it shows the actual number, right? So it's a 4.4 on the Ethernet. I assume the cellular will be a little lower. It's 4.4 as well. So they're all fine. All these connections are capable of doing voice over IP. Mean opinion score doesn't actually take bandwidth into account. It is entirely about if you did a voice over IP call. And they typically only need 100 kilobits. So speeds above a megabit are all going to show up fine. But if this score is bad, it means there really is something wrong with that connection, right? It is losing packets. It is getting faster and slower. It's, its latency is so bad that if you did a call, you would notice.
And the reason it's using Wi-Fi is probably because of the priorities.
And right. Right. So the other thing we got going on here is priorities. So priorities are essentially how much the connection costs. And so Speedify will automatically determine that. I just lost my cursor. Where am I? Here we go. Speedify will attempt to automatically determine that, but it might not be right. So if it sees something like Ethernet or Wi-Fi, if you leave it on automatic, you're letting Speedify decide, right? And if it sees something like Ethernet or Wi-Fi, it'll set that to primary. And primary means use it all the time. It's free. Secondary means I'm okay with you using this to get a speed boost if we need it. I'm okay with you using this to keep us online. But try to use it a little less than those primary connections. It's not free. And so the default is that cellular connections get set to secondary. Right? It would rather, if you're plugged into a cable modem and you have a cellular, Speedify says they probably prefer I use the cable modem. So I'll use that first. And I'll only use the cellular if I don't think the cable modem's good enough for what they're doing. Next is backup. Backup is for even more expensive connections. Don't use this unless we need it to stay online. So if everything goes to hell, your primary and secondary connections are all working really badly or not at all, the backup ones will finally kick in. And then never means don't use this connection at all. And probably none of you want that. The people who use it are, maybe if there's some internet connection you don't want it to use, maybe you're debugging a problem, is it better if I don't use that connection? All right. Try never. But mostly it's people who have done weird things with virtual machines where they have, a bunch of virtual machines running and some of them are claiming to be routers that go to the internet and they're not really. And they build very weird things in their lab and they've got, fake internet connections they know don't work. Well, then just tell us.
Well, that's so serious. Who is John?
I don't know.
So
we need some parent share with non-Speedify VPN user. I want to piggyback off my wife and friends, but cumbersome to get them to install and go through all the steps. Will, why so serious?
Yeah. You just got to get them to install and go through all the steps. If you let us know what's so bad about the steps, we'll fix them.
Yeah.
We need this. Yeah. Click some buttons. You don't even need to make an account if you have an iPhone or Android. Just plop it on there.
Yeah, just run the free version.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
All right. What other things we were supposed to talk about? I think you guys probably know. What was new in Speedify 15.4.1? Or 15.4, whichever.
I forget. Mostly bug fixes and performance improvements. What did we add? What did we add?
I know it's coming in the next version. I'm always stuck on the future. Everything that happened before is old news. We're working on better Starlink integration. We have some really slick things coming for Starlink users.
Ultra smooth.
And we tried to do it in a way to make it easier to add smooth, cool things for people on other ISPs if they have special things that Speedify should know about. But so far, Starlink is the only example doing cool things for them. If you haven't checked out the Miri Router at miri.tech, MIRI.tech, it's nice. So it's this rugged router for video professionals.
Yeah, it's on Amazon
Speedify
too.
It's on Amazon. Oh my God!
And it's awesome.
Yeah,
looks like a tank. M1 Abrams of the router world. They just don't want a VPN. Don't trust. Well,
what? All right.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, so again, new Between Two Palms with a discussion about how SpaceX streams their launches. It's kind of cool stuff. Yeah, not only do they use the satellites, but there's weird problems. Trying to use a radio next to a rocket engine? A rocket engine is putting out pure plasma. It's making radio waves. So just nasty issues, right? Actually, and they're going so fast that Doppler effect will shift the frequency. I know the European Union lost contact with one of their probes. There was a big panic, and it turned out they had failed to calculate for the fact that the thing was going so fast that the radio waves were not at the same frequency when they arrived at Earth as when they sent them. So they realized that they just had to tune the radio a bit, and they got it back. But cool stuff like that. Definitely need a Miri Mini. Yes. I was carrying a Miri Router around in Barcelona. I wouldn't complain if it suddenly weighed half as much. It's so awesome, though.
I think they're thinking about
it's got a 5G, it's got a 4G, it's got 2.45 gigahertz, it's got USB ports where you can tether more phones off it. It's got 4 Ethernets, all of which are programmable. So you can plug in 3 internet connections and 1 client computer, or if you only have 1 internet connection, you can hang 3 computers off it. That's a really slick device. I'm really happy with my Miri. Using my office at home now, right? That's my home internet. Things go out, I'm on cellular immediately, right? I've got a SIM card in the 5G. In the new update, you figured out how to keep the Starlink from dropping connections when it switches satellites. We got some tuning in to make it less of a big deal. Try it. Obviously, it's still Starlink. It's switching around stuff, but yeah, we're getting smarter and smarter.
Same as all the other platforms.
Same as all the other platforms.
15.4.1
is the latest version. Man, we've been going for a while here. We're getting close to an hour. All right. Thank you, Will. All right. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. I think we're going to call it a night here.
Thanks, John, in particular.
Yeah. Super. That's a good suggestion. I'll get it to Magewell about making sure parent share works right on the director. And cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you all online.